All right, we are still at Windy City Pulp and Paperback Convention 2012, and we're talking now to artist extraordinaire and multiple award winner Rob Davis. Rob, how you doing? How you enjoying the con so far?
I am really having a good time at this show. This is our 7th year, Ron and me coming to this show, and we always look forward to it every year. And so far, this show has exceeded our expectations, really. Awesome.
All right. Here are your questions.
Okay.
What inspires you, and what creative things are you enjoying now?
What inspires me? Well, money for one, but actually getting to exercise my creative muscles. That inspires me. My day job is pretty dull, really, for the most part. I get to be a little creative, but I get to use the creative side of my brain for the pulp stuff that we do with Airship 27. And that's what inspires me. What was the other half of the question?
So any kind of movies, books, anything that kind of inspire you artistically?
Oh, well, you're probably trying to get at what inspired me to do this whole art thing, and I'd have to go back to when I was 8 years old, and I bought off the stands. I bought Avengers #2. Wow. And saw the Jack Kirby artwork in that, and it's like his artwork just reached out from the page and grabbed me by the throat and drug me in, and I went, that's what I want to do. I want to draw like that. So that's what inspired me. So you can only imagine this 58-year-old man now, 50 years later, and Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, all the members of the Avengers are now having big screen movies, and they're good. They're really good. Now you talk about inspiration. That here's the little 8-year-old kid in me 50 years later coming back out again because these great movies are coming out. So yeah, that's inspiring.
Awesome. Okay. What is your favorite? Let me put it this way. Who is your favorite pulp-related artist ever?
Pulp-related artist? Well, my favorite artist, period, has got to be Jack Kirby. And I would say he was influenced by the pulps. You can tell that from the way he tells stories, the way he wrote his stories. The concepts he came up with were very pulp-oriented. Like I was talking about, how the characters reach out of the page and grab you and pull you in. So I would say Jack Kirby definitely is my favorite pulp artist.
Okay. What are some examples of your work that readers should and fans of art should look for?
Some of the favorite work I'm doing now for pulp stuff is the Sherlock Holmes illustrations that I do. I've always loved Sherlock Holmes, and getting to draw Sherlock Holmes and Watson and illustrate them in books has been a lifelong dream that's now possible because his early stories have gone into public domain and we can now do those. Probably my second favorite of the stuff that we do for Airship 27 that I draw is the Secret Agent X stories, because there's a challenge there because the guy disguises himself. Well, how do you indicate which character in the scene is Secret Agent X? So I have to come up with some kind of code that the readers can see. So usually what I'll do is I'll hide an X somewhere on his costume. He'll wear a tie and the tie's got X's on it, or it's got a tie tag and there's an X on the tie, or he's wearing a ring and there's an X on the ring, or something like that. Some clue that Secret Agent X is this character in the scene, because we never see his real face, so we don't know what he really looks like. So you have to indicate somehow. So that's kind of a challenge, and I always like a little challenge like that.
That's cool. What's a typical drawing or artistic session like for you?
It varies, but usually I have an 8-hour-a-day job, and some days I'll come home, I'll be really tired, I'll take a nap. I'm a 58-year-old man, I got to take naps every now and then. But after the nap's over with, I'll head to the studio, may get on the computer and do a little design work there, put together the books or whatever, create some logos, and then that's an hour, 2 hours, and then I will sit down at the drawing board if I've got a drawing session to do, and I'll spend the rest of the evening. And I call it, when I get at the drawing table, it's kind of like, I call it a Zen moment, because I get into what I'm doing and time just flies by. I don't know, I may know what time it is when I start, but then I'll look up and 4 hours have flown by and it's only felt like 15 minutes. So that's what a session is like for me. That's what I enjoy about doing art, is that it takes me out of myself and I put myself all the way into the artwork. So that's what a session's like.
You mentioned Kirby. What were your other main influences as an artist?
Well, he was the major one, but there are a lot of different artists. Mostly comic book artists, because that's what I steeped myself in as a young child. Kurt Swan, who did a lot of the Superman, Jimmy Olsen stuff. Just a host of other folks. Gil Kane. When I first started trying to break into comics, I was studying how to do an anatomy. So I ran across Bern Hogarth's book, Dynamic Anatomy books, and those were a huge inspiration. And then I'm blanking on the guy's name, but anyway, there's this one artist who's done Drawing for All It's Worth. I can't think. Loomis. I got his name. Loomis did a couple of books, and I know Steve Rude. I saw him one time. He talked up Loomis really big. So I belonged to an artist's book club, and I saw that they were reprinting his Drawing for All It's Worth book. I ordered one right away. And I'm glad I did, because the very next month they had sold out. Every single copy was gone. So and I have a copy of that. And now you can go to a bookstore and find it today. But at that time, those were really hard to find. So there was another influence. And just an incredible artwork. And if you look at those, you'll see where Steve Rude got most of his influence. It all really comes from Loomis. There's a lot of other. I couldn't name them all. It's stuff that I saw. Pulp covers of all types and sorts. A lot of times I wouldn't even know who the name of the artist was, but I would see something that's really good. I'll try to incorporate some of that. But it's mostly comic book art, and people like Steve Ditko, Kurt Swan, Jack Kirby, and I mean the list could go on and on. Joe Sinnott, who was an inker of Kirby's, he's another one. Even he did some early pencil work that is really pretty inspirational too. Just stuff like that mostly from when I was a kid. I guess most people are like that. The stuff when you're young, you're like a little sponge and you absorb all that stuff. And then later on, you have to do a little more study than just absorbing it. That's pretty much where I got mine.
And what's the next project we'll be seeing from you?
Well, I'm doing all the design work on all the Airship 27 books. The one that just came out is Dr. Watson's American Adventure. Irwin K. Roberts was the writer. Trying to remember I did the cover for that. I penciled the cover, and Shane Evans did the coloring on it. We had an interior artist, Pedro Cruz, who did that. He's got a very interesting style. He uses computers to do what used to be called duo shade, and what it is it used to be a paper that you would use two chemicals with, and one chemical would get all the lines to go that way, and another chemical will put lines that way. And he does that all with computer now, so it's got a real duo shade look to it, and a real old-fashioned early Superman style look to it. After that, on the drawing board right now is I'm doing a comic book story for Airship 27 Redbud Studios book All-Star Pulp. Right now I'm doing a Robin Hood story that was 6 or 8 pages, I forget now, written by I.A. Watson, who also wrote the Robin Hood books for Airship 27. I'm on page 2 of that, and when I get that done, then there's another fella, and this is Van Plexico. He's also
heard of him.
Yeah. Some people might have. He's also written. You're 6 or 8 pages, Van? Do you remember? Have you even written your story yet?
That's why I was asking.
So anywhere between 6 and 8 pages. When he gets his story written for Gideon Kane, right? Gets that'll be next on the drawing board. Trying to think of the next book. We've got 3 or 4 books in the pipeline right now, and none of them are we've got one in the stage, and I forget what's on the board at the moment. But there's 3 or 4 of them, so I don't want to say this is next, and then something else will come up next, because we have 3 or 4 usually in the works, and then whatever one we get all the stories for, or all the illustrations for, that's the one that gets pushed to the front of the queue. But there's several of those, and we've got plans for another Secret Agent book. Secret Agent X book I'm looking for. That'll probably be later in the year. But probably the biggest thing that we've got coming up that'll be coming into the queue is something I can't go into great detail at, because we are not going to announce this until Pulp Fest. But Airship 27 is taking on for the first time a licensed character. They approached us to do this book, and Ron and I are really excited about this. Ron's been doing some editing. The script has come in. Ron's done some editing on it, and he's going to hand it off to me. I'll be doing the 12 illustrations, 9 or 12, somewhere in there, illustrations for it, and then we will announce this at Pulp Fest in early August. So that's the biggie coming up. But unfortunately, I can't tell you which character. Stay tuned.
All right. Well, that sounds great. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us, Rob. And
always my pleasure. Always good to see you, man.
Good to see you, and have a good rest of the convention.
I will. Thanks.
Thanks.